Hello and welcome. I'm host Eric from Talking with Famous People, here with another exciting edition of Eric's Philosophy Talk videos. I'm going to be discussing today the difference between introverted feeling and extroverted feeling. This is something that causes a lot of confusion or misconceptions about how personality types work out and how they interact with the cognitive functions. So, I read a bunch about it, and I understand it now a lot better. And so I thought I'd share the difference between the two and how the whole thing works a little bit with those two functions, and why in particular there tends to be a lot of conflict between introverted feelers and extroverted feelers, or can be, depending, right? So the need to be I'm an extroverted feeler, which means I'm primarily interested in harmony. Now this sounds strange. ENTPs are famously trollish, but really we are interested in harmony, and we're interested in everyone being happy, and we're interested in everyone being socially engaged. That's why we're always putting stuff out there, right? We want to engage other people socially, and we want to entertain them, or we want to impress them, or we want to whatever. That's extroverted feeling. We're worrying about them. Okay, introverted feeling is not worrying about them. It's worrying about you. So the deal on that is pretty straightforward. It's basically where your compromise lies. And the second factor in here that we have to factor in, part two of this, point two, remember that introverted feeling is always paired with extroverted thinking, and extroverted feeling is always paired with introverted thinking. So I'm FETI, and somebody who has introverted feeling is going to be FITE. Now, the key thing is, the extroverted feeler uses compromise about values and behavior, but not so much behavior so much as, like, for example, here's an example of where you get into problems with an introverted feeler. If I'm saying to an introverted feeler, now listen, I understand that you think it's important that we stop Timmy from being dishonest, but I think we have to acknowledge that the circumstances mitigate that a bit, and while I'm not denying that we should punish him, I think we need to, explore the reality that this core value is well desirable, and will sometimes come into conflict with other core values, and we need to determine where we should prioritize those, and we work through that through the process of justification, blah, 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 blah. So what I'm doing there is I'm saying, look, we can figure out how to make everybody happy here. What's fair? Where can we both compromise? Where can we each side compromise to make for a mutually satisfactory outcome? The FI person is going to feel as though they're being bullied into being fake or dishonest or giving up their core principles or something. They're not going to see it as an issue of them being stubborn and not compromising. Now, the way that they do compromise, the way that they get along with everybody, is they learn the rules and they follow the rules. Because their extroverted thinking is all about knowing the facts, memorizing stuff well, like recalling facts and dates and stuff like that, And and rules, and they see things as a very well defined set of causal relationships. They don't have a ton of different models about how the world works, but the model that they have is very consistent with the data in front of them because they're building it directly from the data. They're not intuiting from the data to build abstract models that are involve nonlinear thinking, I guess. So that's how they get along. They learn all the rules. They follow all the rules, and or if they break the rules, it's because it's a rule that's not consistent, as it ought to be. So this is how extroverted thinking gets along. Now, the problem here is going to happen is we're going to say, introverted feelers, you guys aren't compromising. You need to understand that we all have values and they differ somewhat, and you need to compromise a little bit. The introverted feeler is going to be like, stop bullying me into giving up my core beliefs. Then on the opposite side, the introverted feeler is going to be like, we get along with each other because we can follow the rules. And you're not following the rules, you fucking ENTP. You're breaking them all left and right. And it's not cool. And it's not cool because either I'm also a J, in which case I just sort of like fundamentally side with the inherent truth of rules, or I'm a P, in which case it's like, well, I don't know any other way to get along with people, and while I'm not inherently down with rules per se, I'm down with avoiding consequences. So that's the thing about TI and FE and TE and FI. As a FETI user, I find it very, very difficult to understand the brains of and to interact successfully with people who are the opposite on those two vectors. So if you are an FI dominant person and you have extroverted thinking in some sort of lower capacity. For example, if you are INFP, if you are ISFP. Alright, well, let's talk about the ISFP because I've had experience with one recently. And they've got TE in the last position, the fourth position, the, weak at position. And I can tell you my experience with the ISFP. She, I remember her telling me about how I know how to follow the rules. She was talking about like living in her dad's house, and saying how her sister would always get in trouble, but she always knew how to get away with it and what her dad expected. So, I mean, that was the extent of her TE. And she was very much moment-to-moment person, just floating down the river of life, just not projecting out into the future, not fixating on the past, just floating. Craziest thing I've ever seen. Craziest person, most unusual person I've ever met, I think. Completely egoless and strange. And the thing is, what's interesting also about FE, extrovert feeling, which I have, is that it's considered egoless as well. That it's a tool. It doesn't have any particular goal except the harmony aspect of things. And it will achieve that through whatever means it can come up with. And, as opposed to like intuition, which is egoful. So, anyway, that's the difference between FE and FI. And if you have trouble understanding the other side people, you're not alone. They don't resonate intuitively with us intuitors. They don't resonate intuitively with the S's either. It doesn't matter if you are FI TE, you're going to not understand what's going on in someone's head who is FETI, because we roll so differently, and we think so differently, and we communicate so differently, and we prioritize core values so differently that conflict is almost inevitable. Possible exception would be, obviously it would seem to me the FE person has to be the boss, because the FI person's down with following rules. And as long as you establish that, then it should be good to go. As long as they're consistent with their values and stuff. It has to be consistent with their values. Anyhow, if you're a FETI, I wouldn't recommend dating an FITE. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not meant to be.